Alright YouTube, so we are back, of course, talking about some Final Fantasy VII Remake, and today we are doing a kind of follow-up to yesterday's video. And I say that because after uploading yesterday's video and kind of watching it back a few times, I do some of my videos looking for mistakes and maybe trying to find things that I forgot to talk about or whatever. I came up with an idea, a theory if you want to call it that I thought was pretty interesting, and I wish I'd mentioned it in yesterday's video. Or at least elaborated on some of the things that I did mention in yesterday's video so that I wouldn't have to make an entirely separate video, but here we are. So, the premise of this video is when it comes to this Yuffie DLC, what if we're already in the alternate timeline that we created at the end of the game? And the main thing that gave me this idea or thought was the very distinct lack of whispers through the promotional material we received for INTERmission/Intergrade. With the two trailers we've got, we haven't seen a single whisper, and with some of the gameplay that we've received, I've yet to even see a whisper. Now, unless there is a video out there, some gameplay that somebody uploaded, like one of these 11-minute videos or whatever, and there is a whisper in it, then it kind of shoots out this entire theory, obviously. But I've yet to see that if it exists. So why I think this matters is because if you go to any of the trailers for a remake from the 2019 State of Play and beyond, outside of the State of Play teaser itself, I believe every trailer shows whispers to some degree.
Cloud! Quickly! Barret!
Give me a break!
There's a much bigger threat. I just want to do everything in my power to help. All of you. Every time the whispers touch me, I lose something. A part of myself.
And since I'm seeing the Sephiroth scene in the background right now of this trailer, I want to clarify, of course, that any clips from Remake Part 1 that are in the Yuffie trailers obviously don't count. Obviously those might have some whispers in them. I'm talking about the Yuffie segments of these trailers. And obviously, of course, why any of this would matter at all is because the Yuffie DLC is set at sort of the midpoint or so, a little before when it comes to Remake Part 1, during the Sector 5 bombing, kind of the aftermath of that. So the whispers, in terms of the timeline, should be around and active and keeping fate in line and other shit. Now, to be perfectly fair, I don't believe there's anything within the lore that prevents Yuffie from coming to Midgard during the Midgard segment. I don't think there's anything that says she's busy during Year 7 or whatever. So, technically, she may not be breaking destiny or whatever you want to call it, going off the path or whatever. So, there may be no need for, the Whispers to intervene in the DLC because everything's going technically according to plan. And to be honest, we don't really know much of what happens after Cloud separates from Barret and Tifa and falls out of the church and meets Aerith. From meeting Aerith all the way to the Wall Market segment where we save Tifa from Don Corneo, there's a lot of, space between there where we just don't really know what happened. So, technically, there's nothing that says this Yuffie DLC never happened. Don't get me wrong, I believe there is some stuff out there about, Tifa tracking down Don Corneo and stuff like that. There is some lore for what takes place whenever Cloud is kind of absent, but there's still a lot of, nothingness. A lot of shit we just don't know that takes place there, so technically they could do whatever they want with it. So again, you could have all this crazy shit happen in the DLC, which we're seeing with Yuffie fighting Nero and Deep Ground and all this other shit, and technically that's not breaking canon or lore or going off the path of destiny, because we never saw that stuff anyways. But even still, you think the Whispers would be present because they're usually there to make sure that everything happens according to fate. And it's not even whenever our characters are trying to intentionally break destiny. It's just when things happen. The beginning of Remake, Aerith and Cloud talk a lot longer than they did in the original FF7. And because of that prolonged interaction, it gives time for the Shinra troops to catch up with Cloud, which isn't what happens in the original FF7. Cloud and Aerith have a very small interaction. Buy the flower, don't buy the flower, then they part ways. In the original FF7, Cloud's not slaying Shinra soldiers left and right throughout the streets of Midgar running from a helicopter chasing him and shit. That's just not what happened. So the Whispers intervene to, run Aerith off so that they can break apart and Cloud can run from the Shinra soldiers like he did in the original game. Another example would be them attacking the Sector 7 slums and intentionally hurting Jessie because she's not supposed to go on the bombing mission for the Sector 5 reactor. Cloud is, but in Remake, Barret doesn't want Cloud to join them for some reason, so they kind of correct that as well. The point of all this is that the Whispers intervene with things big and small when it comes to the original FF7 story, so you'd think we'd see them within the Yuffie DLC trailers trying to help or protect Yuffie so that nothing happens to her and she can join up with our party and things play out like they did in the original game. So moving beyond this, the point of the entire spiel about the Whispers is that maybe the lack of them when it comes to the Yuffie DLC from what we've seen is because they no longer exist because, of course, we defeated them. Now, that kind of is weird to think about, right? Because this Yuffie DLC has taken place in the past, but remember, everybody that believes the Zack theory, the Zack is alive, the entire premise of that theory is that we defeated the Whispers all throughout time, as in we defeated them in the past. So if you're somebody that believes that Zack Fair is alive based on the ending of Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1, then you cannot completely write off this idea or theory, because he'd be surviving in the past before this Yuffie DLC even takes place, so of course the Whispers would not be present. One of the descriptions we've received for the Intermission DLC, episode Intermission, Yuffie DLC, Intergrade, is that it's like the bridge between Part 1 and Part 2, and what if that's like a very literal thing? What if we're seeing the ramifications of the ending, of us defeating the Whispers and the Whisper Harbinger? What if the Yuffie DLC is the start of that? What if that's why we're seeing so much deep ground shit? There's a little bit of deep ground stuff in Part 1, and obviously deep ground has existed like 20 or 30 years before the events of FF7, but what if us defeating the Whispers is why we're seeing shit we feel like we shouldn't be seeing yet? Because the Whispers aren't there to make sure we don't see it. I've been saying for quite a while now, if you guys have been subbed and watched my content for however long last year or so, that there's got to be a bigger like ripple effect of us defeating the Whisper Harbinger, defeating fate and destiny itself, than just Zack Fair surviving. And maybe, again, this Yuffie DLC is kind of the start of the ripple effect, the start of the butterfly effect of what that actually caused. And I was also questioning with that last video how the Yuffie DLC is going to be the bridge between Part 1 and Part 2, the intermission between Act 1 and Act 2. And again, if the Whispers are defeated here in the past and not there to make sure shit happens like it's supposed to, that's the answer. Look, my dudes, I completely accept that this is a potentially crazy off-the-wall theory, but the thing is, you gotta do these kinds of topics before we actually have the answers. I can't wait for the DLC to come out and then make a video like this. I have to make it ahead of time, and then whether I'm right or wrong remains to be seen, of course. And to be honest, this is actually what I want from this DLC, and it's not just because I'm doing a discussion about it. I want more from the ending of Remake. I want to know more of what the hell is happening, and I'm kind of hoping this DLC will give us that. Also, my dudes, it's getting kind of late as I'm recording. This video is taking a little bit longer than I thought it would, so I don't know if I'm going to put it out today, as in May 30th, but if I don't put it out tonight, it'll be out tomorrow on the 31st. Anyways, dudes, that is pretty much the video, so of course I want to know your thoughts in the comment section below. Is this something that you even thought of, considered, don't agree with, whatever the case? And if there is, in the gameplay that exists out there, a Whisper anywhere, then it pretty much shoots this theory in the back of the head. Either way, hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. We'll see you more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn on my notifications. Follow me on Twitter, @DavidYT. I'm on Discord. Links to my social networks are in the description. And in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine or leave it like Cobain.